The galaxy was vast, and its council chamber even vaster. It stood as a testament to unity, a place where beings from countless worlds came together to discuss matters of peace, trade, and survival. The room itself shimmered with an otherworldly glow, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that represented the cultures of those who attended. On this particular day, the air buzzed with anticipation. Delegates from across the stars had gathered for their monthly meeting, each carrying agendas and concerns unique to their species. Among them sat Dawson, a human representative known for her calm demeanor and sharp mind. She had been chosen to present Earth's latest advancements in sustainable energy, a topic she hoped would garner support and collaboration among the council members. But today, something unusual accompanied her. At her feet, a small alien cub named waddled awkwardly, its fur glowing faintly under the artificial lights of the chamber. Belonged to an endangered species called the, admired for their ability to mimic sounds and emotions. Had adopted after rescuing it during a diplomatic mission to its home planet, where its family had fallen victim to environmental collapse. At first glance seemed harmless enough. Its wide, curious eyes darted around the room, taking in everything: the towering delegates, the hum of technology, the occasional burst of laughter or heated argument. Glanced down at the cub, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. Bringing to the council meeting hadn't been part of the plan, but leaving it behind felt wrong. After all, trusted her now, and she couldn't bear to abandon it. As the meeting began, settled into her seat while curled up quietly at her feet. The session started smoothly, with representatives sharing updates on their respective planets. However, things took a turn when tensions rose between two rival factions over resource allocation. Voices grew louder and tempers flared. One delegate leaned forward aggressively, shouting, "This is ridiculous." Another shot back, "You're impossible." The room erupted into chaos, with everyone talking over one another. Tilted its head, listening intently. Its sensitive ears absorbed every word, every tone, every nuance of emotion. To its horror, the cub let out a soft whimper, then repeated the phrases it had just heard. "Ridiculous. Impossible," it mimicked, its voice high-pitched yet eerily accurate. The room fell silent for a moment as all eyes turned toward and the glowing cub at her feet. For a split second froze. Then, realizing what had happened, she quickly scooped into her arms and mumbled an apology. "I'm so sorry," she said, her face turning red. "Is still learning about proper communication." Some delegates chuckled nervously, while others exchanged amused glances. For a brief moment, the tension in the room eased, replaced by quiet laughter. After the initial shock wore off, tried to focus on the rest of the meeting. But her mind kept drifting back to, what if the cub picked up more inappropriate phrases? What if it disrupted the proceedings again? As the session continued, she noticed watching the delegates closely, its glowing fur dimming slightly whenever someone spoke softly and brightening whenever voices grew loud. It was as if the cub could sense the emotional weight of every word. Later, as the meeting adjourned, approached Jake Miller, a linguist assigned to assist the council. Jake was known for his expertise in cross-species communication and hoped he might have some advice. "Jake," she began hesitantly, "do you think you could help me teach better phrases? I don't want any more interruptions like today." Jake smiled warmly. "Of course, is fascinating. It has an incredible gift for mimicry. We just need to guide it toward using that talent constructively." Together, they devised a plan to expose to positive language and calming phrases, hoping to steer it away from the harsh words it had already learned. Over the next few days, spent hours working with, repeating phrases like "let's work together" and "we can find a solution." Jake joined her, offering insights into how different species interpreted tone and intent. Slowly but surely began to respond, its glowing fur pulsing gently whenever it successfully repeated a phrase. Despite these efforts, couldn't shake the feeling that its presence in the council chamber was both a blessing and a curse. While the cub's antics had momentarily lightened the mood, she worried about the potential consequences. Would the other delegates see as a distraction? Or worse, Would they view it as a threat to the seriousness of their discussions? Still, there was something undeniably endearing about its curiosity and innocence, reminded of why she had become a diplomat in the first place, to bridge divides and foster understanding. Perhaps, she thought, its unique abilities could serve a greater purpose. Maybe, just maybe, the cub could teach the council something about empathy and connection. As prepared for the next meeting, she resolved to remain patient and open-minded. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: life in the Galactic Council chamber would never be the same, not with around. The next day arrived with a sense of quiet anticipation. Dawson woke early, her mind buzzing with thoughts about the upcoming council meeting. She glanced at who was curled up on a soft cushion in the corner of her quarters. The little cub's glowing fur pulsed faintly as it slept, its chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. Sighed, feeling both affection and concern for the creature she had come to care for deeply. After breakfast, spent some time reviewing the agenda for the day. Earth's presentation on sustainable energy technologies was scheduled for the afternoon, and she wanted everything to go smoothly. But no matter how hard she tried to focus, her thoughts kept drifting back to, what if it repeated another inappropriate phrase during the meeting? Would the other delegates lose patience this time? Shook her head, trying to push the worries aside. She reminded herself that Jake Miller would be there to help, and together they could manage any disruptions. By the time they arrived at the council chamber, the room was already filling up with delegates. Az took her seat, settled quietly at her feet, its wide eyes scanning the bustling crowd. The atmosphere felt tense, with murmurs of disagreement rippling through the air. It seemed the contentious debates from the previous day hadn't been resolved, and tempers were still running high. When the meeting began, things started off calmly enough. Representatives shared updates on their planet's progress, discussing everything from agricultural advancements to interstellar trade agreements. Listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. So far, so good, remained silent, seemingly content to observe. But then came the discussion about resource allocation, a topic that had sparked heated arguments the day before. Tensions quickly escalated as two rival factions clashed over access to a newly discovered asteroid rich in rare minerals. Voices grew louder and accusations flew across the table. One delegate slammed his fist on the desk, shouting, "This is unacceptable." Another shot back, "You're being completely unreasonable." Winced, bracing herself for what might come next. Sure enough, perked up, its glowing fur brightening as it absorbed the rising tide of emotions. Before could react, the cub stood on all fours and let out a loud, clear imitation of the phrases it had just heard. "Unacceptable, unreasonable," it barked, its voice echoing through the chamber. For a moment the room fell silent. Then slowly, laughter began to ripple through the crowd. Some delegates chuckled softly, while others erupted into full-blown guffaws. Even the sternest members of the council couldn't suppress smiles, turned red with embarrassment, quickly scooping into her arms. "I'm so sorry," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the din. "It won't happen again." Despite her mortification, couldn't deny the effect the outburst had on the mood. The tension in the room dissolved almost instantly, replaced by a sense of camaraderie that had been sorely lacking. Delegates exchanged amused glances, and a few even clapped lightly in appreciation of the unexpected entertainment. After the session ended, sought out Jake Miller. "We need to do something about this," she said, her tone half frustrated, half resigned. "Can't keep repeating things like that. It's going to ruin my credibility." Jake nodded sympathetically. "I understand your concerns, but maybe we should look at this from a different angle. Isn't doing this out of malice. It's just reflecting what it hears. Maybe instead of suppressing its natural behavior, we can channel it towards something positive." Frowned, considering his words. "What do you mean?" "Well," Jake continued, "think about it. Has an incredible ability to mirror emotions and language. If we teach it calming phrases or constructive responses, It could actually help diffuse conflicts rather than escalate them. Intrigued, agreed to give it a try. Over the next few days, she and Jake worked tirelessly to train. They exposed it to recordings of peaceful negotiations, teaching it phrases like, "Let's find common ground and we can work this out." Proved to be a quick learner, though its mischievous streak often got the better of it. More than once, caught it mimicking snippets of conversations it overheard outside official sessions, sometimes helpful, sometimes hilariously inappropriate. As the days passed, noticed subtle changes in the way people interacted with. Delegates who had initially dismissed the cub as a nuisance began to warm to it, marveling at its uncanny ability to reflect raw emotion. A representative from a distant star system approached after one particularly chaotic debate. "Your cub might be the most effective diplomat we've ever had," she joked, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Laughed nervously, unsure whether to take the comment as praise or criticism. Still, she couldn't deny that its antics were having an impact. While formal discussions continued as usual, there was a noticeable shift in the overall atmosphere. Conversations became less adversarial, and moments of levity brought delegates closer together. One evening, as sat alone in her quarters, she reflected on the strange turn of events. Lay curled up beside her, its glowing fur casting a soft light across the room. Despite the challenges and occasional chaos the cub had brought into her life, couldn't imagine being without it. In many ways had become a symbol of hope, reminding everyone in the council chamber of the power of empathy and understanding. As sleep claimed her, realized that wasn't just a pet or a responsibility. It was a partner in her mission to foster peace among the stars. And though she knew there would be more hurdles ahead, she felt confident that they could face them together. After all, in a galaxy filled with conflict and division, sometimes the simplest gestures, a kind word, a shared laugh, or even a well-timed mimicry, could make all the difference. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Dawson. She found herself in a constant balancing act, trying to manage unpredictable behavior while navigating the complexities of galactic diplomacy. Despite her best efforts, the little cub continued to disrupt council meetings with its uncanny ability to mimic sounds and phrases. Each outburst brought a mix of laughter, frustration, and, surprisingly, moments of unexpected clarity. One afternoon, as prepared for another session, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping in. The topic on the agenda was a particularly contentious one: territorial boundaries between two powerful factions. These disputes had simmered for decades, and tensions often boiled over during discussions. Knew that emotions would run high, and she feared what might happen if picked up on the wrong words at the wrong time. As the meeting began, the room was already charged with tension. Delegates exchanged sharp glances, their body language stiff and guarded. When the discussion finally turned to the boundary issue, voices grew louder and accusations flew back and forth. One delegate leaned forward aggressively, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You're staking claims without any regard for history," he snapped. Another shot back, "History? Your history is nothing but lies." Clenched her fists under the table, bracing herself for what she knew was coming. Sure enough, perked up, its glowing fur brightening as it absorbed the rising tide of anger. Before could stop it, the cub stood on all fours and shouted, "Lies, lies." Its voice echoed through the chamber, startling everyone into silence. For a moment no one moved. Then slowly laughter began to ripple through the room. Some delegates chuckled softly, while others burst into uncontrollable laughter. Even the two arguing delegates paused mid-sentence, their expressions shifting from outrage to disbelief. Turned red with embarrassment, quickly covering his mouth with her hand. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the noise. "This won't happen again." But despite her mortification, noticed something remarkable. The laughter had a strange effect on the room. It broke the cycle of hostility, forcing everyone to take a step back and reflect. For a brief moment, the delegates forgot their grievances and simply enjoyed the absurdity of the situation. Who had grown fond of leaned over and whispered to, "Maybe your cub has a point. We've been telling each other lies for long enough." Nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure how to respond. She realized that interruptions, while unintentional, were serving a purpose. They reminded everyone of their shared humanity, or rather, their shared sentience, and forced them to confront the futility of endless arguments. Still, knew she couldn't rely on chaos to bring about peace. She needed a better plan. Later that evening, met with Jake Miller to discuss their next steps. "We have to find a way to control this," she said, packing back and forth in her quarters. "Can't keep disrupting meetings like this. People are going to lose patience eventually." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "You're right, but I think we're missing an opportunity here. Mimicry isn't just random. It's a reflection of the emotions and energy in the room. If we can teach it to recognize patterns of hostility or frustration, maybe we can use it to de-escalate conflicts." Paused, considering his suggestion. "How would that work?" "Well," Jake explained, "we could train to pick up on specific tones or phrases associated with anger and then respond with calming words. Imagine if, instead of repeating insults, it said something like 'let's talk' or 'we can work this out.' That could change the dynamic entirely." Intrigued, agreed to give it a try. Over the next few days, she and Jake worked tirelessly to refine training. They exposed it to recordings of heated debates, teaching it to identify aggressive tones and respond with soothing phrases. At first, progress was slow. Struggled to differentiate between constructive criticism and outright hostility, often mimicking phrases at inappropriate times. But gradually, it began to grasp the concept. During one practice session, played a recording of a particularly tense argument. As the voices grew louder, tilted its head, its glowing fur pulsing gently. Then, without prompting, it spoke in a soft, clear voice. "We can work this out." Stared at the cub in amazement, her heart swelling with pride. For the first time, she felt hopeful that antics could be turned into something truly meaningful. When the next major dispute arose, a disagreement over interstellar trade routes, decided to put their training to the test. As tensions escalated and voices grew louder, sprang into action. Standing on all fours, it repeated the phrases it had learned, its voice calm and steady. "Let's talk," it said, pausing briefly before adding, "We can work this out." The room fell silent as delegates turned to look at the glowing cub. For a moment, no one spoke. Then slowly the atmosphere shifted. The anger that had been building dissipated, replaced by a sense of curiosity and introspection. One delegate cleared his throat and said, "Perhaps we should listen to the cub." Others nodded in agreement, and the conversation took a more constructive turn. After the session ended, received praise from several delegates, approached her with a smile. "Your cub is a natural diplomat," she said. "It reminds us of what really matters, finding solutions, not fueling conflicts." Smiled, though she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still walking a fine line. While interventions had proven effective, she knew there would always be risks. Not everyone appreciated the cub's antics, and some viewed it as a distraction from serious matters. Still, couldn't deny the positive impact it was having. In a room filled with egos and agendas, innocence and honesty cut through the noise, reminding everyone of the importance of empathy and understanding. That evening, as sat alone in her quarters, she reflected on the journey she and had taken together. From the moment she had rescued the cub, it had challenged her in ways she never expected. It had forced her to confront her own fears and insecurities, pushing her to think creatively about how to navigate the complexities of diplomacy. And now, it was showing her that sometimes the simplest gestures, a kind word, a calming phrase, could make all the difference. As curled up beside her, its glowing fur casting a warm light across the room, felt a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that wasn't just a companion or a responsibility, it was a partner in her mission to foster peace among the stars. Together, they had stumbled upon something extraordinary, the power of connection, even in the most unlikely forms. And as sleep claimed her, knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they could face them side by side. The weeks passed quickly, and Dawson found herself growing more confident in its ability to contribute positively to the council meetings. The little cub had become a symbol of hope and humor, breaking down barriers that even the most skilled diplomats struggled to overcome, but knew their work wasn't done yet. There was still much to learn about harnessing's unique talents for the greater good. One morning, as prepared for another session, she reflected on how far they had come. No longer mimicked harsh words or insults, at least not intentionally. Instead, it responded to tension with calming phrases like, "Let's talk," or "We can find a way." These small interventions often shifted the tone of discussions, encouraging delegates to focus on solutions rather than arguments. Still, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more could do. She decided to push further, exploring ways to deepen its role in fostering understanding among the council members. That afternoon, the meeting began with an update from a representative named Daniel Carter. His planet had recently faced a crisis involving food shortages, and he was seeking assistance from the council. Listened intently as Daniel described the challenges his people were facing: droughts, crop failures, and rising tensions over limited resources. His voice trembled with emotion as he spoke, and it was clear that this issue weighed heavily on him. As Daniel finished his presentation, a murmur of concern spread through the room. Some delegates offered immediate support, while others hesitated, citing their own resource constraints. The discussion grew heated, with voices rising as everyone tried to make their case. Noticed watching closely, its glowing fur pulsing gently as it absorbed the energy in the room. Suddenly stood up and let out a soft whimper. Then, in a clear voice, it repeated one of the phrases it had learned: "We can work this out." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to the cub. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Daniel smiled. "Thank you," he said softly, addressing directly. "I think we can." Inspired by the cub's intervention, the delegates began brainstorming ideas. One suggested sharing advanced agricultural technologies, while another proposed creating a coalition to address similar crises across multiple planets. By the end of the session, they had drafted a plan to provide both short-term aid and long-term solutions. Watched in amazement as simple phrase sparked collaboration and creativity. After the meeting, Daniel approached with gratitude in his eyes. "Your cub has a gift," he said. "It reminds us of what's possible when we set aside our differences and focus on helping each other." Nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Doesn't understand politics or agendas," she replied. "All it knows is emotion, and sometimes that's exactly what we need." Encouraged by the success of the day's meeting, decided to take training to the next level. She enlisted Jake Miller's help once again, hopping to teach the cub to recognize not just anger but also sadness, fear, and uncertainty. Together, they created recordings of emotional speeches, exposing to a wide range of tones and expressions. They wanted to respond not only to conflict, but also to moments of vulnerability, offering comfort and reassurance when needed most. The training sessions were challenging but rewarding, proved to be remarkably perceptive, picking up on subtle cues that even experienced diplomats might miss. When exposed to a recording of a delegate expressing frustration, responded with "Let's talk." When played a clip of someone voicing sadness, it softly whispered, "You're not alone." Each breakthrough filled with hope, reinforcing her belief that could play a vital role in shaping the future of galactic diplomacy. A few days later, the council convened to discuss a sensitive topic: the resettlement of refugees displaced by interstellar wars. Many delegates entered the chamber with heavy hearts, knowing the gravity of the issue. As representatives shared stories of suffering and loss, the mood in the room grew somber. Tears welled up in some eyes, while others clenched their fists in quiet rage. Watched closely, wondering how it would respond to such raw emotion. To her surprise, the cub didn't mimic any specific phrases. Instead, it walked slowly around the table, stopping near each delegate who seemed particularly distressed. When it reached Daniel Carter, who had spoken passionately about the plight of his people, nuzzled against his hand and softly murmured, "You're not alone." Daniel froze, staring at the cub in disbelief. Then, without warning, he broke down in tears. Other delegates looked on, their expressions softening as they realized the depth of his pain and the universality of it. Slowly, the room came together, united by a shared sense of empathy and resolve. By the end of the session, the council had agreed to establish a fund dedicated to supporting refugee resettlement efforts. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, and one made possible by the compassion had inspired. Later that evening, sat alone in her quarters, reflecting on the day's events. Lay curled up beside her, its glowing fur casting a warm light across the room. She thought about how much the cub had changed since she first brought it to the council chamber. What had started as a potential liability had transformed into an invaluable asset, reminding everyone of the importance of connection and understanding. Jake joined her for a late-night conversation, bringing snacks and tea. "You know," he said, sipping his drink, "is teaching us something important. Diplomacy isn't just about policies or agreements. It's about listening, feeling, and responding with care." Nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. And does all of that instinctively. It doesn't judge or hold grudges. It simply reflects what it sees and feels, reminding us of our shared humanity, or sentience, I guess. They laughed softly, enjoying the quiet moment. As the night wore on, felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the journey they were on together. In a galaxy filled with division and distrust, his presence was a beacon of hope, proving that even the smallest gestures could have the greatest impact. When sleep finally claimed her, dreamed of a future where conflicts were resolved not through force or manipulation, but through empathy and understanding. And in the center of that vision stood, glowing brightly, its voice echoing softly, "We can work this out." Time moved forward and became a permanent fixture in the Galactic Council chamber. No longer seen as a disruption or a distraction, the glowing cub had earned its place among the delegates. Its presence was no longer questioned. It was celebrated. The little creature that had once stumbled into the world of diplomacy had grown into an icon of unity, reminding everyone of the importance of empathy, patience, and understanding. Dawson watched with pride as continued to influence the council's proceedings. Over time, the cub's interventions became less frequent but more meaningful. It didn't need to repeat calming phrases at every meeting because the delegates themselves had started adopting the mindset embodied. They began listening more closely to one another, pausing before reacting, and seeking common ground instead of clinging to their differences. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was undeniable. One day, during a particularly tense debate about interstellar trade routes, noticed something remarkable. A delegate who had previously been known for his sharp tongue and quick temper took a deep breath before speaking. "Let's find a way to make this work for everyone," he said, echoing one of his favorite phrases. The room fell silent for a moment, and then others followed suit, offering compromises and solutions rather than accusations. Glanced down at, whose glowing fur pulsed gently in response to the positive energy in the room. She smiled, knowing that the cub's lessons had taken root. As months turned into years, grew older. Its movement slowed, and its glowing fur dimmed slightly, but its spirit remained as bright as ever. Delegates from across the galaxy came to admire the cub, sharing stories of how it had changed their perspectives. Some even brought gifts, small tokens of gratitude for the creature that had taught them to see beyond their own agendas. When's term as a representative ended, she faced a difficult decision. Should she take back to Earth with her, or should she leave it behind, knowing how much it meant to the Council? After much thought, she chose the latter. Had found its true calling in the Council chamber, and taking it away would feel like robbing the galaxy of something precious. On her final day, stood before the assembled delegates, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Has been my companion and teacher," she began, "but it belongs here with all of you. It reminds us to listen, to care, and to connect. I trust that you'll continue to honor its legacy." The delegates erupted into applause, many rising to their feet, stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you for bringing into our lives. We'll take good care of it and of the lessons it's taught us." With a heavy heart but a sense of fulfillment, said her goodbyes. As she left the chamber, she glanced back one last time to see curled up in its usual spot, surrounded by smiling faces. She knew she had made the right choice. Years later, stories of the little cub that changed the galaxy persisted. New delegates arrived, eager to meet the legendary creature that had once turned insults into opportunities for connection. Even after eventually passed away, its legacy endured. Statues were erected in its honor, and recordings of its calming phrases were played during moments of tension in the council chamber. The lessons had taught lived on in the hearts of those who had known it. Diplomacy became less about winning arguments and more about building bridges. Conflicts that might have escalated into wars were resolved through dialogue and mutual respect. And though it was no longer there to guide them, its influence lingered, a reminder that even the smallest beings could leave the biggest impact. In the end, Story became a symbol of hope, not just for the Galactic Council, but for all sentient beings. It proved that understanding and compassion could transcend language, culture, and species. And while the challenges of the universe were far from over, the memory of a curious little cub kept the Council grounded, inspiring them to face each new day with open hearts and open minds. As looked up at the stars from her home on Earth, she often thought of. She imagined the cub still glowing brightly, its light reaching across galaxies, touching lives and fostering connections wherever it went. And she smiled, knowing that the legacy of the cub who learned human swear words would never be forgotten.